So it makes perfect sense that we're talking about biohacking to go right into Anthony DiClementi. Entrepreneur, that's kind of a theme here, you may have noticed. Author of the bestseller Biohacker's Guide to Upgraded Energy, and world-class expert in optimizing human health and performance. He works with pro athletes, Navy SEALs, Hollywood celebrities, and he is willing to challenge the current status quo of conventional healthcare. He's revolutionizing the path to optimal healthcare, also known as Badass Biohacker. Please welcome Anthony DiClementi.
Thank you very much. Are you guys able to hear me all right? Okay, cool. I'll figure out how to use the clicker. And if it's all right with you guys, I'd like to turn the energy up a little bit. Very excited and honored to be here with all of you. A lot of brilliant minds in the building. And the title of my talk, Secrets of Superhuman Health, How to Identify and Remove the Toxins That Accelerate Aging. This is a picture of my father when he was 21 years old. My dad was a fireman for 27 years. He worked his way up to commander-in-chief of the Glenview Fire Department in Illinois. That's a picture that was captured by the local newspaper in Glenview as my dad was running into his first fire. It's one of my favorite pictures for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is because a lot of the strength and courage that I got, as is probably the case with many of you, came from my father. And we all have fires in our lives. And it's up to us whether we choose to run towards the fire or run away. My dad was trained to run towards the fire because if he didn't, people died. And I'd encourage you to think about how that parallels with your lives and what you do. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2015. I moved down to Florida in 2017, and about a month later I got a call from my mom that my father wasn't doing well. And she was concerned that we were going to lose him if drastic measures were not taken. So without hesitation, I said, come on down to Florida and we'll do what we can. They'd exhausted their options with conventional medicine, and his health was continuing to decline. This is actually a picture that my parents sent out in December of 1981. I was born December 19th, 1981. I hadn't yet come into the world, so they decided to rent a monkey and put him in my place. When my dad came down, he was unable to walk from the car to the beach. He had to stop every 10 feet to catch his breath. He was doubled over and he was exhausted. During that visit, we made it our mission to find the toxins that were running my dad down, to get to the root cause of Parkinson's and find a solution that not only slowed the decline that he was experiencing, but reversed it. That was our mission. It started with removing the mercury from his mouth. We did some diagnostic tests. We found out that he had a smorgasbord of toxins, as you'd probably expect, ranging from infections, parasites. I had the exciting experience and pleasure of waking up in the middle of the night a few days after his mercury had been removed. The front door of my place was wide open and my dad was in the driveway getting ready to smash the window of my Jeep Wrangler because he was hallucinating. As some of you guys may or may not be aware, there's a growing body of scientific evidence showing that the electromagnetic fields from our phones, from Wi-Fi, compromise the blood-brain barrier. And as my dad had the mercury removed, and his body finally realized it was okay to dump some of the toxins that it had been holding on to keep them out of his blood and vital organs, it got into his brain. And I had a very interesting 48 hours with my dad. The term Mad as a Hatter, as you probably know from the character of the Mad Hatter in the Disney movie, came about because hat manufacturers and craftsmen would get mercury into their body before they knew that it was a neurotoxin. So this was the start of our very exciting journey. And now there's even more scientific literature showing that mercury decreases mitochondria, the very things that we use to produce energy, by 50% in just 72 hours. And we have these things in our mouths. So I encourage any of you to take a look in the mirror, open up your mouth, and if you have any loved ones that have not addressed this issue to encourage them to do so, to see a biological dentist, because it made a big difference with my father. We also started looking into his genes. We found out that he has a gene known as the MTHFR mutation, where he is unable to remove mercury the way that people who don't have that gene do. So all of these things were important in us figuring out what needed to happen in order to get my dad back to a state of health. And I apologize, we don't have any of the where I get to see the next slide coming, so you guys are kind of getting this fresh on the first time. This was not an overnight thing. 5 to 10 years leading up to his diagnosis, my dad was having night terrors. He was waking up in the night screaming. We watched him go from a guy who could bench press 300 pounds when I was working out with him in high school to a guy who the muscle was falling off of his body, and he had balance issues, cognitive decline, back pain, poor endurance. It was something that we should have stepped in and intervened earlier, but we didn't. And one of the first questions that they asked shortly after his diagnosis was, did you grow up on a farm? Which seems like an interesting question. And at the time, my dad's mental state was it had dilapidated to such a point that he said, no, I didn't grow up on a farm. And fortunately, my mom was sitting with him, and she goes, well, yeah, Gene, you spent every summer at the farm with your dad. My grandfather owned a landscaping company, and every summer he would utilize the free labor of his children to spray pesticides and pick apples and do everything. I bring that up because there's a new 2018 study that has found a 250% increased risk of Parkinson's disease in individuals that were exposed to pesticides. Now, where did this all go? From my dad coming down to Florida in October 2017. 1 week ago, my dad was in the Carolinas with 3 of his best friends, and he played 4 rounds of golf. That was last week. And I bring that up because no matter where anyone is in their life, there is always hope if we're willing to run into the fire. So who am I? I'm an author, CEO of Biohacking Secrets. We've been blessed to sell about 50,000 copies of my book, The Biohacker's Guide to Upgraded Energy and Focus. I was awarded Top Biohacker to Follow in 2017 and 2018 alongside Tim Ferriss and Dave Asprey. And we consider it our mission to disrupt and then revolutionize healthcare, to help people take control of their health and learn the tools necessary to optimize their physical and mental performance. I've got a podcast called The Biohacking Secrets Show. We've had on guests like the greatest big wave surfer of all time, Laird Hamilton, Joe Pizzorno, who wrote the book on functional medicine, Tony Horton from P90X, the Iceman and 26-time Guinness World Record holder, Wim Hof, the professor of neurobiology at Stanford, and many more. And I've had really cool opportunities like coming down to teach Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, his doctor, alongside other people, some of the things that we're doing to achieve the quote-unquote impossible. But in 2011, I was on my own deathbed. And after seeing 12 doctors and them not having any answers for me, I took it upon myself. I took responsibility for my own health. And I said, if no one is going to figure this out, I'm a smart enough guy where if I can't find a solution in hours of scouring the internet, I can't expect a physician to find it in a 15-minute appointment. I had been outsourcing the most vital assets, the most important assets that we all have, my mind and body. I'd been expecting someone else to solve my problems for me. And after seeing those 12 doctors and hearing the same thing over and over and over again, there's nothing wrong with you. I took responsibility for my own health and I started biohacking. And slowly but surely, as I started looking for those toxins, the things at the root cause of all of this, I started finding solutions. And once I had identified them, I'd figure out the best protocols for getting rid of them. And I started coming back to life. Now, I'm not perfect. None of us are. But I'm a heck of a lot better than I was in 2011. The one thing that I want to impress upon you guys, I like to take the complex and make it as simple as possible. I believe, from everything that I've seen, that the most accurate predictor of longevity is energy production. ATP production at the cellular level. Because that is what drives our immune function, that is what drives detoxification, and our stress tolerance. There's even studies now showing that mice who had the greatest mitochondrial function lived 36% longer than their counterparts. And if you look at people who are examples of exemplary health and fitness, like Jack LaLanne, he died of pneumonia. That's immune senescence. It's the immune system shutting down because the body was no longer making energy. So we need to shift our focus away from these surrogate endpoints and this fractionalized view that we have, and we need to start focusing on what matters. So you may ask, what is biohacking? That's a picture of myself with Dr. Joseph Mercola, who some of you may know. We recently had him on the Biohacking Secrets Show podcast and got to hang out at his house for a few hours. We had a blast. We're going to be going back in a month or two. This is how we define biohacking, not how other people do. This is my definition. It's the strategic use of ancient wisdom and modern science to upgrade the body and mind. It's the art and science of becoming superhuman. We look at biohacking as focusing on the 20% that delivers 80% of your results. That's what I needed to do when I was sick, when I had no energy to even get out of bed. I had to figure out what were the small things I could start with that would move the needle the most. Now, because of my obsessive personality, I've become very interested in that last 20%. What closes the gap between 80% and 100%? And that's where I spend a lot of my time now. But for most of us, this is where we need to begin. How we're different. What we do at Biohacking Secrets, it's different in a few ways. One, our diagnostic tools. We have a proprietary health assessment, and we utilize a very select amount of tests that are able to quickly identify the root cause, not just those symptoms and surrogate endpoints that a lot of people are focused on, the root cause of our fatigue, of our diet-resistant fat, of our chronic illness. When I was sick, I had to take a multidisciplinary approach. I had to be willing to cross-pollinate, to not put myself in a box of one specific discipline. I needed to focus on whatever worked. And that's what we continue to take to the work that we do with clients and what we share in the books that we create, because we only really care about what is going to move the needle, not which discipline it came from. And we have an integrated approach as opposed to the more specialized approach that has become popular in Western medicine, where they see the body as this collection of independent organs. We see it as one integrated system. And we've identified 10 biological switches that we believe are the most important. It's your environment, your nutrition, your movement, your stress management, your sleep, supplements, hydration, oxygenation, light, mindset, and habits. Those are the chapters in the foundation component of my book, The Biohacker's Guide to Upgraded Energy and Focus. We rely on a few critical tests for performance and longevity. We look at the genes like APOE status, your risk of Alzheimer's, one of the things that my dad has, which is probably responsible for the reason that he's in his 60s and experiencing advanced Parkinson's. We look at ALT because of the increased incidence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease now. Glucose and insulin, your bun to creatinine ratio as a marker for your cellular hydration and your kidney function. Estradiol, especially in men. Over the past 10 years, we've seen estrogen in men going through the roof. There's a lot of things in our environment and our lifestyles that are responsible for that. The Horvath clock methylation test, the life length telomere test, we choose that one because it also provides the number of critically short telomeres, which is a very important metric. And then there's a 23andMe test. Dr. Emily Givler takes a combination of your 23andMe test and your organic acids test and is able to give you additional data points into your genes and optimization strategies that you can use to take your health and performance to the next level. And then, of course, the blood hormone toxicology stuff. One of the things that I wanted to discuss with you guys is this longevity paradox. We have so many of us, so many people in our community that are focused on how do I live to 150? No, how do I live to 180? How do I live to 200? Yet we're ignoring the things that kill us early, the things that cause premature death. We're never going to get there. It doesn't matter how many NAD shots you take if you've got heavy metal toxicity and parasites living inside you that are zapping your energy. So I think we need to adopt a much more robust paradigm where we first say, let's avoid premature death before we focus on longevity. And that's a big part of what we're doing. This is now the first generation not expected to outlive their parents. That's never happened before in human history. So a lot of this longevity talk, it's hot air. Before longevity comes into play, we must avoid premature death. It's the third year in a row now that U.S. life expectancy has dropped, and it's reflecting rising in drug overdoses and suicides. This is the reality that we're living in right now, guys. And for many health-conscious Americans, only incremental gains are going to come from this continued obsession with food. It's paleo. No, it's keto. No, it's vegan and vegetarian. I'm a pescatarian. I'm avoiding these foods. I'm doing an elimination diet. We're not going to get much further with that mindset. We need to think bigger. It made sense when Hippocrates said it in 400 BC. We're living in a very different modern world, and we are constantly bombarded with toxins that our genes have never seen. We need a better skill set. Exponential gains will come by way of learning to identify the toxicities and deficiencies responsible for our symptoms, for our clients' symptoms, for the symptoms of our mothers and our fathers, our brothers and our sisters, and then learning the most effective protocols to correct them. The hole we don't know about, that's the one that sinks our ship. One of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, and I can't really read it, and I'm going to misquote it. But he basically says, what gets us in trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. Here are some warning signs that you may be aging faster than you should be. Diet-resistant weight, anxiety and stress, sleep-resistant fatigue, pain and inflammation, digestive issues, sexual side effects, low motivation, visible signs of aging like wrinkles and hair loss, autoimmunity, including a growing list of food sensitivities, poor recovery after exercise, difficulty focusing, or feeling like you're ADD. Does anyone here identify with any of those? Couple hands. I had the whole list. So why are we aging faster? Number one, as I've mentioned, is toxins. It's the glyphosate. It's not the gluten. Stop the gluten-free BS. It's the glyphosate. It's bromine and other endocrine disruptors like plastics that are interfering with iodine's ability to bind to our thyroid. It's heavy metals, infections, Epstein-Barr, parasites, Lyme, cytomegalovirus, toxoplasmosis, Candida, SIBO, H. pylori, Babesia, Bartonella, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, herpes simplex, hepatitis, and dental infections, an often overlooked source driving heart disease and cancer. We need to get better at identifying these infections if we're going to help progress and move this society to the next level. Mold in our homes and EMFs. This is a picture of Frank. I'd worked with his sister. She had Lyme disease. We'd helped her. She called me and she said, Frank's in bad shape. He'd shut down his business. He'd moved back in with their parents. And Nikki thought that he was close to dying if something drastic didn't happen. Like my father, he'd exhausted all conventional options of Western medicine. His number one challenge was physical pain. He was in a wheelchair. The night before Frank and I got on the phone, he had gotten trapped in the bathroom, and his parents had to come in, physically lift him off the toilet and put him back in his wheelchair. But the pain of those wheels hitting the grout in between the tiles of his bathroom floor was so much that he couldn't even be pushed back to bed. He had to spend the night in the bathroom. That's where he was at. What we found with Frank: autoimmunity, candida, Lyme, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, parasites, low stomach acid and enzyme production, dysbiosis, EMF sensitivity, or just a lot of EMFs, heavy metal toxicity, and mitochondrial dysfunction. This is Frank after. 9 months after. Same guy. That's after he finished a jog in Mexico. There's a long list of some of the things that helped Frank: kill protocols, ozone, daily walks outside, meditation, cold exposure, sunlight, coffee enemas, grounding, interacting with friends and social, mostly ketogenic diet, getting proper sleep quality and duration, massage, modafinil to help him break through the fatigue early on. He he came to Biohacking Week and was on crutches. He did a 10-minute plank and beat every other guy there. And I go, Frank, how the F did you just do that? He goes, you want to know the truth? And I go, yeah. And he goes, I'm microdosing LSD. I'm seeing fractals. I burst out laughing. I've got to keep it real with you guys. Certain B vitamins that addressed genetic issues, infrared sauna and acupuncture. Problem number 2, chronic stress. This state of sympathetic dominance where our nervous system is constantly turned on and the resulting cortisol dysregulation that occurs. So I realize technically a number of these are also toxins, but I put it in this order for ease of communication. Immunogenic and allergenic foods. Foods that you're sensitive to that you don't realize are activating your sympathetic nervous system. Electromagnetic fields, Wi-Fi, cell phones being the 2 big sources. Information overload. It's like impossible to disconnect now. Trading real-world relationships for social media. Overworking and overtraining. We're more connected yet more lonely than ever before. And as you see in this article, which has a number of studies backing it up, the risk of teen depression and suicide is now linked to smartphone use. A Harvard study, a meta-analysis that recently came out, found social relationships have twice the impact on longevity as exercising regularly and maintaining a healthy body weight combined. This is a picture of myself, Drew Canoli from Organifi, my man and VP of Biohacking Secrets, Carrie over there, and Danette May at Mike Geary's place in Utah, having a blast. There's also a huge survival advantage that comes from social relationships, and it's comparable to quitting smoking. So if you or people in your programs or people that you're helping, patients, are isolating themselves to eat perfectly, we need to take that into consideration. Jessica's story. Jessica's number one challenge, when she came to us, she wanted to lose some weight. It was diet-resistant weight. She was chronically fatigued, she had exercise intolerance, she could barely even work out. She was depressed, she had digestive issues, and her whole body was inflamed. What we found: adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion, EMFs, candida, you'll start to see some similarities. Deficiencies like iron, sunlight, nature, autoimmunity, dental mercury, hypothyroidism, Lyme disease, parasites, blood sugar dysregulation, certain genes that affected her ability to detox and produce energy. And we ran into a situation where we'd addressed a lot of this stuff, and she was still suffering. And as I was scratching my head, I said, Jessica, there's got to be something in your home. This is what we found. We had a building biologist come in and found that her house was riddled with mold. So we need to think bigger. We need to think outside of diet and exercise. And then she just sent me this the other day. She said, I just passed my first parasite. I feel so proud. Jake Prazik, who held 2 world records for bench press, he came to one of our Biohacking Week events. He put up 920 pounds when he weighed 240 pounds. The guy's a beast. He still holds one of those world records. He was experiencing heart palpitations and murmurs that would wake him up in the middle of the night. What we realized was after some of his afternoon workouts, those evenings, he would do some bread and Skippy peanut butter. He hadn't made the connection that Skippy peanut butter was one of the things that was putting him into sympathetic overdrive. It was causing an immunogenic and allergenic reaction that was waking him up and causing all of these heart issues. Cut out the peanut butter, the problems went away. Now, we did a lot of other things as well, but it's a cool story. Problem number 3, deficiencies. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies, magnesium, B vitamins, iron, electrolytes, vitamin D, etc. Stomach acid, low stomach acid is becoming more and more prevalent. Enzyme deficiencies, hormonal deficiencies, glutathione, sulfur, neurotransmitters. Our ability to detox, basically having suboptimal detoxification pathways, sunlight, nature, and social connection and supporting relationships. Branch actually did this thing that we had put on for a while called Biohacking Fridays, where I would do like free consultations on social media for people that needed help. And after ours, he was like, I want consulting. What do I need to do? So we started working together, and now he's a part of our team. But the reason he came to us was his number one challenge was poor sleep. He also had digestive issues, food sensitivity, stubborn belly fat, cognitive and neurological issues, declining eyesight, and low motivation and drive. What we found, EMFs, it's a big one. If you're not looking for that, start. It affects everything. Dr. Diederik Klingart, who's one of the world's foremost Lyme literate practitioners, won't even see clients now unless they've already reduced their EMF exposure by switching from Wi-Fi to Ethernet, cut their cell phone use, cut their laptop use, because it interferes with progress to that degree. And I know it's not a popular topic, but we need to open up our minds to it and open up our eyes to it. Deficiencies, low testosterone, early signs of neurodegenerative disease, mitochondrial dysfunction, heavy metal toxicity, mold toxicity, parasites, candida. He had a cornucopia of things as well. Well, after we made a few changes, reduced those EMFs, we got a 218% increase in deep sleep. That's the before and after. You can see the deep sleep here. This is from the Oura Ring, 39 minutes of deep sleep to an hour and 25 minutes. These are the changes that can happen, and they're measurable and they're trackable. Improved his eyesight by 2 prescriptions. His optometrist asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I can't tell you." He said, "I need to know." And he's like, "I'm doing morning sun gazing." Just leave that one with you. I don't recommend it unless it's done correctly. 150% increase in testosterone, naturally. Not hormone replacement therapy bullshit, naturally. Theirs is before 497, recently 745. That's all I have for you guys. The one thing that I want to say in closing is this. Look for the fires in your life. The knee-jerk reaction and what most people do is they run from them. But it's a choice. And make no mistake about it, we are at war. There are people and organizations in power that would love nothing more than to see you, your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, and your sisters die a slow and expensive death. And there are people in this room fighting the war right now. Thank you.